Okay, hi. So in this video, I want to share a little bit about my own motivation for pursuing this interior journey with so much persistence. Any of you who have already embarked on this journey, you know that it's not for the faint of heart. And there are times that you really feel like, it's so difficult that you might be tempted to give up. But why don't you give up? For those of you who still hang on, who do whatever you need, do whatever you need to do to get the support that you need to help yourself continue this journey, even if you need to sometimes pause, chill a bit. What's the reason you want to keep on going? For me, at the core of it, or the heart of it, is because I wish to love well. Okay, I wish to love well. Now, loving well is not the same as loving much. Okay, this is something that I've been pondering on for many years as I went on my healing journey, as I looked at my own personal history and the relationships that have formed me. And here's a truth that I didn't know when I was younger. I didn't know that there was this distinction between loving much, which is loving a lot, and loving well. So what do I mean? I think we all have the experience in our life where, we feel a lot of affection for someone, or we adore someone, or we really care a lot for someone, right? So it could be, if you're a parent, it could be your child, it could be a pet, it could be a good friend, it could be someone that you're mentoring, that you're caring for. There could be someone that you love a lot. Okay, so that's what I mean by loving much. And you wish, when you love a lot, you will the good of the other. I mean, you want to help the person flourish, right? Generally, when you love much, we do whatever we know, to show that other person or the other that we love him or her. But it is at the same time possible to love poorly, even as we love a lot. So, for example, if we have poor boundaries, we may actually be getting enmeshed with the person that we love much, right? We may become codependent with the person that we love much. We really will good of the other. But if we are not well ourselves, we have no clear boundaries, we end up not setting the other person free to be him or herself. We bind that person to us because we need to have that kind of enmeshed connection, right? That comes from our wounds, usually wounds that we are not aware of ourselves. So consciously, we can be loving much. If you're a mother, I know you could be thinking, well, I'm sacrificing so many things. I'm sacrificing so much of myself. I've given up so much of my life for my child. I love him a lot, or I love her a lot. But you may not realize that the way that you're loving your child is harming him. So what's that? You can love much, but love poorly. Okay? What would loving well look like? Loving well would honor the dignity and the personhood and the independence of yourself, as well as the person that you love. There can be healthy interdependence, right? So that means you yourself and the other person are really clearly distinct individuals who have your own personhood, your own identity apart from that relationship. Freedom to pursue what each of you discern is the best for you, right? Freedom to explore, to make mistakes, to learn, to grow. And without undue stress to conform to one another, but also without such disconnection that there's no relational attachment, right? That there's no relationship. Because boundaries, since we're talking about boundaries, can be either too too clear or too, what's the word? Too impermeable. So boundaries can be too impermeable, where it's too rigid, right? Where then there's no connection, or it could be too porous or non-existent, and then everything is kind of enmeshed. So neither extreme is healthy, right? And at the same time, I want to say it's not so simple as I want to practice better boundaries than I can. Our capacity to have healthy boundaries, to have flexible boundaries that can adjust according to the situation, depends a lot on our own wholeness, our own integration, our own security in our own belovedness. And right there is what I mean by I choose to make this interior journey. I choose to seek guidance and help, counseling and therapy and spiritual direction, I learn all these things because I want to be more whole, not just for the sake of being whole, although it is true that I've come to believe that I deserve wholeness, right? That every person is really created for joy, okay, for wholeness, so that we can love well and receive love, so love one another well. So I'm worthy of the effort that it takes. Yes. If I don't believe that I'm worthy of the effort that it takes, I would not be doing a lot of what I'm doing. I would not be investing in workshops and therapy and spiritual direction if I didn't think that I was important enough for that. But if it was just for me, sometimes I honestly would be probably a lot more laissez-faire, laissez-faire about, okay, it's no rush, I'll get around to it when I get around to it. But it's because I notice when I'm not whole, I get into unhealthy patterns of relating to people. And often the people that I love the most, right? I love much, can be hurt or harmed by me without my intention. And how do I know that? Well, to the extent that I'm open to hear what they can say to me, and to the extent that I suppose the relationship is at least healthy enough that the other person is able to tell me honestly how they feel about our relationship, I can tell that a lot of times the effect of my actions, of my loving, is not what I intend. So while I love much, I see that my loving much sometimes is not loving well. And instead of setting people free to be themselves, to see them flourish, I see them diminished sometimes, or feeling bound to me, or having to choose between that friendship or relationship with me versus happiness or joy. It's not, there's something not quite right there. So what prompted me to do this little sharing today? Recently, quite a few of the people that I've been speaking to across different contexts, just friends or people I've been journeying with informally, and as well as clients, I have seen varying degrees of this resistance to the idea that I need expert help, okay? Or I need expert help in, particularly in the area of counseling or psychotherapy. Sometimes it's this sense that I can't be that broken, or surely I'm able to figure things out myself. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to maybe read books, right? Surely I can help myself get better. And this is what I have to say about that. Yes, it's not that you can't make any progress at all in the interior journey on your own if you are really learning and listening, on your own, right? So you're willing to read and all that. But you cannot know what you don't know, right? The whole point of this journey is even when we are aware that something's off, we don't really know what is it that's holding us back, that is keeping us handicapped or broken. And progress can be made a lot more effectively over a shorter period of time and more safely if you have an experienced and qualified guide there to help you. Okay, so something a little kind of innocuous, and it's an example I've used before in one of my earlier podcast episodes in Becoming Me. If you're someone who takes physical fitness really seriously, right? You can go and work out on your own, right? You can go and swim on your own. You can, let's say, follow Pilates or yoga via videos on the TV. You could go to the gym and start using the gym equipment. Sorry for that expression, but I personally think, it's not a very good idea to do these things unless you have been taught first by someone who's experienced how to do these exercises, whether it's at the gym or swimming or, or yoga, Pilates, whatever sports. So that you won't hurt yourself while you're doing the exercise. Okay? And not just so that you won't hurt yourself, so that the work that you are putting in can reap maximum benefits, right? In that realm, I mean, like if you're swimming, you can be expending a lot of energy and be very, very tired and not really swim very long. If you use the right strokes, if you know how to roll like a log, for example, it's okay if you don't understand what that means, but let's say when you're doing the front crawl or freestyle, there's a way when you know how to do it right, it becomes more effortless and you can cover greater distances with a lot less energy lost, right? So that's exercise. If you hurt yourself, or if you find that you're suffering from some kind of physical ailment, right? I mean, you can try and toughen up and maybe just pop some, Panadol, some painkiller, and hope that your body just recovers on its own. And sometimes for minor things, it can. It does. Our body does have the capacity to heal itself, right? But there's a certain line where if you really want not just to survive, but to thrive, and you are able to recognize that you are hurt, perhaps worse than you thought you were, you're not just going to try and do it on your own, right? You're going to go see a medical expert. That's the same thing for the interior life, whether it's spiritual development and spiritual growth, learning ways of prayer, of connecting with God. So many people say, I don't feel anything. I don't feel like I can connect with God. And then they leave it at that, right? Do they really desire? Do they desire enough to ask the questions such as, are there other ways that I can pray, for example, that can help me deepen my desire for God, deepen my connection with the scriptures, or, help me to know who I am in this relationship with God? If we don't ask these questions and then we don't find the resources, and if we don't look for seasoned, qualified guides, okay, so by qualification, I'm not just talking about paper qualification, okay, because really sometimes there can be people with paper qualifications, but they're not really qualified in being a good guide. Okay, and sometimes there are people that may not have the formal qualifications, but through their life experiences and giftings, both natural and spiritual, you may find that they are guides that can help you make your journey too, right? Even if it's not in a formal capacity. But we need to look for the help that's tailored to our need. And I want to say that even the spiritual life, those of us who, let's say, want to love well because, let's say, because of our faith and because our faith teaches us that we are called to love God and neighbor as we love ourselves. So even if the start is because of faith or religion, or because even if it's not religion, just being a good human being, right? We want to be able to be caring people, to be kind and compassionate people. but we don't know how to do those things because we can't love well, even when we love much. Then it all comes back down to the state of our core identity. Right? So in one of my earlier podcast episodes, in episode 4, which is a very foundational episode, I always keep coming back to that. It's called Living from the Inside Out. Authentic and integrated living, right, requires us to be able to live not just on the surface level of our lives where everything happens and requests are made of us, relational issues, jobs, all the crises and things that are happening, they're all at the outer layer of our lives. Circumstances constantly change and we are often challenged, right? And when circumstances and our environment is maybe more peaceful and quiet, life is easier. We feel that life is easier. But that's all still out on the surface of our lives. In the inner layer of our lives, where our emotions, our thoughts, and our body kind of like speaks to us, it tells us something deeper. Not just what's going on the outer layer of our lives, but what these things mean to us and how we are responding. Or are we feeling, for example, afraid or threatened? It gives us important information about how we need to navigate the external environment, right? But this inner layer, it needs to be interpreted, right? Our thoughts, our emotions, our physical sensations, it needs to be interpreted and it needs to be brought together by a core self. Now we're at the deepest level of our core self. And our core self is our identity. When our identity is very wounded and very dependent on tranquility on the outer layer, right? Very dependent on affirmation and the approval of others. When our identity, our core is very brittle and fragile, we yearn to be liked and to be loved. We fear deeply to be rejected and abandoned. So then our actions, the way we respond to the environment, the way we respond to the outer layer of our lives will often be defensive or grasping or aggressive, right? Because we're acting out of fear, we're acting out of insecurity. Even when we're trying to be loving and compassionate for a lot of us without realizing, that's actually a response of anxiety. That's actually a trauma response, so to speak, where we are people-pleasing, right? We want to come across as very compassionate and kind and understanding, but really, it's because we want there to be peace. We are afraid of conflict around us because conflict just stresses us out. We cannot really truly be authentic if we're acting out of fear. The only way for us to be authentic and courageous and brave, which also includes being vulnerable, but not being afraid of being vulnerable, trusting that loving well sometimes means being uncomfortable and making others uncomfortable. Well, the way to do that is to have a strong and integrated core identity. And all of us start off with a wounded core identity, right? So even in this process of connecting with our core self and then responding from remembering who we are, it's not a static thing. If we don't go through healing, our core self will always still just be that broken and insecure, right? We'll just be constantly going through cycles of fear and defensiveness or aggression or people-pleasing. But if we get more integrated, we will see the change. We will see ourselves becoming more confident, more secure, more secure about who we are, and more able to know the difference between loving well and loving much. We begin to be able to make that discernment, in every relationship or a context. What would it look like, or what would it mean to love well? Even if our loving well may not always be received well, okay, at that moment, we can have the confidence that we are being true to the best that we can do, and also that we have the support and the mirroring of people we can trust, right? So we're not just acting out of blindness. We are aware that we do have blind spots. We know that we can never love perfectly. So loving well is different from loving perfectly. No one can love perfectly except God, right? But we are awakened to our blind spots, and that just changes everything. It gives us a lot more humility about how we love. We are more willing to acknowledge, I'm sorry, this is the best I can do. Because even as I'm learning to love well, I now recognize that a lot of times I love poorly, right? I mean, there are ways that I still am not able to love well because I'm a work in progress myself. See, when I don't realize that the difference between loving much and loving well, if someone tells me that they feel that I'm not loving them well, I would just be very angry and defensive because I would just be pointing at, look at how much I love you. Look at all the things I've done for you, for example, right? Without the awareness that all those things that I've done because I love much may not be loving well. So, here's an invitation for you to consider what is your motivation to be on this interior journey yourself? How important is this journey to you? How urgent is it for you at this point in your life to do what it takes to make progress in it? Because life is short and unpredictable. And here's a hard truth. We are always acting out of our blindness, even when we think we're not. And when we act out of our blindness, we harm others, even when we intend the best. So if you really want to love well, what's stopping you from making that possibly very uncomfortable step to acknowledge that you need help? And just one final thought. Sometimes that fear of acknowledging that you need help, that need to just do everything yourself, to try and fix things yourself and to fix yourself on your own, that right there is very likely a response from your own wounds. Somewhere down the line, you had learned that you have to cope on your own. Okay, so that is a mark of your wound. That is a symptom. So I pray that you will find that grace to not just remain stuck there, and that you will recognize if the time is now and the door is opening for you, please don't delay. If anything, just take that next step, okay, to ask yourself, why? Why are you wanting to make this journey? And get really, really convicted about the reason. Because without that conviction, you're not going to move. Take care.